he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mario Man 100 back again with another episode of How's My Team? So we have the Titans to talk about, and we have the Giants to talk about, and some miscellaneous and other stuff as well. But let's start with the Titans. Okay, so wearing my old Titans jersey again this episode, and it was another loss at home after the bye for the Titans. It was 28 points to 16 against the Melbourne Storm. Much closer than I thought it was going to be. The fact that it's only 12 points in terms of the margin actually isn't necessarily a bad thing, but Melbourne were far from their best in this game as well. So they could have probably piled on more points than they did, but at least at this point, it's one of the only games this year that we actually haven't conceded 30 plus points from an opponent, because we've only done that against the Knights, the Roosters, I'm going to scroll down, and the Knights again, and then yes, the Storm. So we've only done it 4 times this year, obviously 5 times with the Raiders in the first game against the Raiders, when they scored 30, but most of the other margins that the teams against us, the opponents have scored more points. They're very much in the high 30s and low 40s, including a 50 to 18 point drubbing with the Cowboys. But it was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. It looked like we were going to be dead and buried. It's pretty early in the second half. They eventually did come back. There was a try that was overturned in the second half that obviously very much killed a lot of the momentum we had towards the end of the second half, and then we just ran out of time. As to the call, I didn't watch the game. I could have watched the game because I was at home, but I was hearing it on the radio. There was 2 fouls, one from each team on the play, but I don't understand in terms of the call and from the bunker on the fact that the try gets overturned, with the fact that Ryan Pappenhausen doesn't have a clear path to play at when he was playing at Tino, who was just standing there and not moving. But again, it's Casey Badger again, which I don't want to single out Casey Badger inherently and say that's the reason why we lost the game. Obviously, it killed the momentum, obviously, for the Titans in the second half, especially with that call. And obviously, the Storm held on at the end. But when it comes to Casey Badger, in a lot of the games against that she either refs or is like a video ref or something of a Titans game, Titans usually lose those games. It's very much like certain referees that are referees to the Titans game as well. They seem to not like the Titans. I think Henry Paranaris in the past was very much like that. I believe it's how his name was pronounced, but it was a while ago. So with that, we stay in 16th. We do drop to 16th again. Obviously, the game, we could drop to the bottom. We are victims to drop to the bottom if the Panthers do win over the Eels today. in their, I guess, a derby of the West type of game, just due to the fact that obviously the Panthers have got 9 points and we've got 10. And then obviously, if the Panthers win, they'll go to 11. Obviously, the Eels would have to lose by like 40 points to drop to last and like go from 15th, which they're in just in front of us, to 17th. But I mean, it is possible. Obviously, it is. But I think that the Eels are a bit more competitive than people give it credit for. I will say that I was surprised that the Knights, obviously, they lost this week as well. They lost yesterday, and I'm surprised they didn't get absolutely mauled by points. But yeah, very unfortunate. Again, they put up a decent fight against the Storm, but the Storm definitely weren't at their best, and they haven't been for a lot of the games this year. They've been very on and off, and they're sitting in second position right now, but the Warriors and the Raiders still haven't played, or at least I think the Warriors haven't played today, and actually both teams haven't played yet because they both are not on the bye. There's a few teams around that were on the bye this round. Obviously for Origin 1, which I will say for Origin, the Blues getting up over Queensland and making it 1-0 in the men's game, and then the women's game, Queensland won by the narrowest of margins at the end, making it 2-1 to the Blues in the women's game. Both games really competitive. It's been like the women's game, the weather wasn't great in Newcastle, and yeah, both teams put up a decent fight, and pretty much most of the women's games in terms of Origin this year were very competitive. Obviously, the margin in terms of the first two games, with the Blues wins over the Maroons, kind of suggest against that, but both teams were very competitive. I think with game one, I think it was kind of unexpected that the Blues were going to win by that much. But the Maroons played a lot better in game three, I will say, and they just beat us on. Well, I wouldn't say the buzzer. It was a couple of minutes before the game finished, and the way that it kind of finished was a little bit kind of. I know I'm a New South Wales fan, and I will say that this is a little bit of bias, and some people will say that, but it just kind of seemed like the last couple of minutes after the Queensland, the game-winning try from Queensland, with the kickoff call, was weird because I felt like that was, the touch judge is right there in front of the ball and can see the ball has gone over the 10 meters, which the kickoff has to. A player cannot, especially if you're kicking short, a player from the kicking team cannot touch the ball unless it goes over 10 meters from the kickoff, so from the 50 to the 40 meter line. For whatever reason, it goes over, and the referee has blown the play dead a few seconds later after one of the New South Wales Blues players picks up the ball and says that it's been touched within 10 metres. And I'm sure that the touch judge did not put their flag up or anything like that to say, oh yeah, no, that's a penalty. But somehow it went against New South Wales. Obviously, New South Wales did have the last roll of the dice. There was a sin bin, obviously, in the last couple of seconds for laying around in the tackle, which, that was a fair call because they were laying around well in advance of a few seconds there. They were purposely playing the clock there. And I guess I kind of understand if it was the shoe was on the other foot that, the New South Wales player would be putting the sin bin if the New South Wales players were doing that, were winning the game, and then, wasting time in that regard. But, yeah, it's kind of couple of calls at the end just kind of felt a little bit weird against New South Wales. Obviously, they did not have a challenge. They used it probably about 10 minutes earlier and lost it. So that kind of would have kind of helped. But, but overall, Origin this week was pretty competitive. Obviously, a win for both New South Wales and Queensland. But obviously, in the men's game, New South Wales won. So it's 1-0 heading into Perth, which is in a couple of weeks' time. Big grudge match. If people don't know what State of Origin is, it's very much like a rivalry game of state versus state. Imagine some of the big top like college football is probably the best comparison I could probably give of like state versus state. Like big colleges that have the big rivalries against each other, or say in the NFL, like a team that is in the same division goes against each other, especially in like a huge game that will, like towards the end of the season, that could make or break a playoff run for one of the two teams. It's very much like that on a big scale. It's one of the biggest games of the year for the NRL. It's a 3-match series with players that have played childhood football in New South Wales playing eligible to play for the Blues, and obviously players that have played childhood football in Queensland obviously will go for the Maroons, which is Queensland's team. 3-match series, usually it's one game in New South Wales, one game in Queensland, and one game in a neutral venue, whether it be Perth like it is this year. It has been in Melbourne previously as well. It has been in Adelaide as well. But it will be Perth this year for Game 2, obviously starting in Queensland in Game 1, which obviously New South Wales won. It's the first time since, I think they said 97-98, that we'd won consecutive games at Suncorp, New South Wales, which is crazy. But yeah, it was a great game. It was very competitive. New South Wales definitely put them to the sword, and it was kind of, I will say that it was kind of more dominating from New South Wales than it was Queensland. Queensland kind of dropped the ball a lot. Some of the Titans players, obviously Bert Fulmore had his debut. Only had like the last 5-10 minutes of the game, which kind of sucks for him, but he had a taste of Origin football. Tino played well. Mo played decently, but he dropped the ball a decent amount as well. So there was players that were playing pretty alright to really good, but like someone like Bo, that just was trying to get a debut, didn't get really much of a chance. But I suspect that he will be picked in Game 2. I think that ultimately Queensland will probably change a bit of their side, but won't drastically change it. Obviously, yes, they don't want to lose this next game, because then obviously the Shield, which is the trophy for the series, will stay in New South Wales again for another year, with obviously Game 3 being a dead grubber, basically. It was like a participation game for them. If they lose this next game, they don't want to go. You kind of don't want to go in the other direction in changing things too much that the cohesiveness of the side is not there. So you kind of want to strike a balance, which New South Wales, for the most part, in the last 20 years, have done that multiple times. And Queensland was reasonably alright with it. They didn't have to focus on it too much. They obviously, when they had new players come in, they obviously had a lot of veterans in there in key positions to combat that as well. So it'll be interesting to see what Queensland does with their side, as well as New South Wales, especially with the games coming up in the next couple of weeks, because obviously injuries can play a part in that as well. So we'll see what happens. But the Titans, obviously the next game is on Saturday. It's the late night game on Saturday against the Broncos at Suncorp. So it is a Queensland derby game, and one of the biggest games of the year. The Broncos at the moment are sitting in 11th whereas we're sitting obviously in 16th, but could be at the bottom if the Panthers win over the Eels today. So it's very important for both sides, especially the Titans, if they want to try and get out of that bottom four situation. And obviously for the Broncos, it's a huge game for them because obviously they're trying to stay in line with the top 8 as well. So losing any points along the journey will hamper their chances of making finals football. So big game for both clubs. Hopefully in a derby game like this, the Titans can show up again and upstage Big Brother in terms of the Broncos. But we'll see how we go. We have plenty of good players on the team, and obviously there was quite a few that showed out, especially with some being out for illnesses and injuries. AJ was out as well this game. There was a couple outs. So it was pretty good in the fact that they went up against a huge club in Melbourne. Haven't won against them a lot, but Jalen DeGroot was out as well as AJ Brimson. They were the two big names. So Jaden Campbell had to go back to fullback, which brought Kieran Foran into 6 and Tommy Weaver into 7 into the actual side. Obviously, Mo got moved to the bench, whereas Jamin Jolliffe got promoted to the starting side, as well as Regan Campbell-Gillard. They kind of reshuffled a lot of things, but it did work a little bit, obviously, because Mo had played a lot of minutes in Origin as well. It's another reason probably why he was on the bench. But it wasn't as bad of a showing as I thought it would be. But there's still another loss and still potential to go to the bottom of the ladder again in 3 consecutive weeks. And with that, we move on to the Giants, and oh boy, they got out of jail. So it ended up being a 3-point win against Richmond. For the most part, Richmond were on top of the game pretty much the entire way. I think that the Giants only got ahead, I think, once early on in the first quarter, after they kicked the first goal of the game. But for most of the rest of the game, they were behind the 8 ball pretty much the entire way, and ended up being down by like 28 points, I think it was, at the third quarter. So it ended up being 12 goals 8 to 10 goals 17, with obviously 80 plays 77. 2 goals 1 in the first quarter for the Giants, whereas it was 6 goals 5 for Richmond in the same time frame. But obviously they doubled that, the Giants, to 4 goals 3 by halftime, and Richmond only kicked 1 goal 4. Actually, sorry, I can't count. 1 goal 6 in the second quarter. So their inaccuracy very early on was not great for the Richmond Tigers. Obviously, the third quarter was a little bit better. It was 7 goals 6 to 10 goals and 16 for the Giants. And then obviously with Callum Ward going down early in the first quarter, which looks like a very bad knee injury, could be career-threatening, which I hope to God it's not. I don't know. It was an inspiring speech. I don't know if he was giving them a bit of a spray, but it was an inspiring speech at the three-quarter time break, when they usually have like their team meeting on with the coach and that. He just got in front of the players, was talking to all of them, and inspired them to a 3-point win, because they literally scored the only last 5 goals of the game and overtook the Tigers late in that game. So it was a 3-point win. Puts us back in the top 8. We did drop out due to Fremantle winning earlier in the day. So we end up in 7th, whereas Fremantle is in 8th now, with Western Bulldogs obviously dropping out of the 8, but most of these were due to the fact that we're hitting the first lot of buys, like the buy rounds now. So teams like the Bulldogs, the Cats, and there was a few other teams around that aren't playing this round. The Swans got absolutely smashed by the Crows. But there's only a few games. I think there's only 7 games. So there's 4 teams that were out this week due to buys. So obviously with the Giants, it's not until after the Gold Coast game at home that we hit the bye for the season. And it actually probably is a good time for that, because obviously we do go to Monaco Oval next game against Port Adelaide in Canberra. Then obviously go up to Queensland to face the Lions at the Gabba, and then come home in the Expansion Cup against the Suns. So it's very, very important that we had to get this win. And I will give the Tigers credit. They played reasonably well in this game. They really shut down a lot of the... I didn't watch this game. I was just watching... I'd watched maybe the first couple of minutes of the first quarter. And that was about it. But they played reasonably well. Obviously, their inaccuracy definitely killed them, because you cannot kick 10 goals 17 and expect to win a game. And even Kingsley, like Adam Kingsley, the Giants coach, said to the about the Giants yesterday, and it got posted this morning, we should not have won that game. And to be honest, we probably shouldn't have either. We didn't play that well, especially for the first half. The second half was definitely a lot better. We still tried to keep it competitive, but they massively put on a massive amount of points, and I think they were up by at least 25 plus points multiple times in the game. But a win is a win, and a loss is a loss. But for the Richmond Tigers, I feel like in a lot of ways the Giants, like some of the other teams this year, kind of got a little bit ahead of themselves and thought that the Tigers were not going to show up. And the Tigers have won 3 matches for a reason, and it's for that reason, in the fact that they pretty much considered underdogs in a lot of games this year, and have proven against some good sides that obviously were thinking a bit too much, and their ego was a little bit too much. And obviously the Giants almost fell victim to that as well, which would have gave Richmond their 4th win of the season, which probably would have put them into probably even a situation where they might have even gone outside the bottom 4. They are 3rd last though. They are still in 16th with obviously a loss, and not too much of a heavy hit to their percentage, but it is a game that they probably rue losing. But win is a win for the Giants, and can't complain about it too much. 3-point win was kind of one of those games where we could have had percentage come our way if we played better, especially in the first half. But you go into you win and you end up going up another position to 7th. So not a bad situation considering we were outside the 8 earlier on in the day. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, we'll go over some miscellaneous stuff now. We'll go over like hockey, which obviously I don't have a team in, and just watching hockey for the sake of watching the NHL. The Oilers and the Panthers, so the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, facing in the Stanley Cup Finals again for the 2nd year running. Hoping it's Edmonton this year. More than the Panthers. Obviously, the Panthers had never won one until last year. Never won a Stanley Cup, whereas Edmonton haven't won in God knows how long. But hopefully it's Edmonton this year. I would like that to be a situation that does happen, but we'll see what happens over the 7-game series. Probably go for a couple of weeks, so we'll see what happens. We'll talk about the A-League, because the A-League Grand Final was yesterday. It's Sunday. I'm recording pretty much all of this episode. And Melbourne City won 1-0 against Victory, and Victory were very much one-dimensional, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, which was obviously a reference to their, I would say, their promo, in wrestling terms, their promo against Auckland FC in the lead-up to their second leg game. But they were very much played off their feet. They had a few good shots, but obviously the defence of Melbourne City was a lot better. But it was 1-0, and it was the goal that was scored was in the first 10 minutes of the game. And Melbourne City hadn't won a Melbourne derby in a few years. I think it was like 700 odd days. that they said. So the fact that it's the second time, which it feels like it's more than that for Melbourne City. It's only the second time they've won the toilet bowl. Basically, is what the coin term is for a lot of fans, because it very much is like a a circle cut out of another circle. In terms of trophy, it very much looks like a toilet bowl, but like dipped in gold and that sort of thing. But it is the second time that Melbourne City has won that trophy. Obviously, they've won the Premier's Plate a few times, but it's the second premiership of their A-League careers and A-League life, rather, as a club. And you know what? Can't be too upset with the result, in the fact that obviously City were playing a lot better than Victory in that game. And yeah, Victory were very one-dimensional. But the defence from a few shots, obviously, from Victory for Melbourne City, the defence was immense. So they played pretty much to the big stage, as they haven't really done a lot in the past, and same with Victory, they kind of fall into the wayside of being the bridesmaid again in another grand final. Moving on to the Champions League, that was this morning, and it was an absolute drubbing. PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, 5-0 over Inter Milan to win their first Champions League trophy ever. Great. I'm pretty sure that PSG had not won one before. Inter Milan had won one previously. They had won before, but yeah, 5-0 was not what I was expecting. Obviously, I haven't watched the highlights yet, but I'll go back to that and watch those highlights. But that is an absolute mauling, especially with Inter Milan getting into a situation with their own league and kind of losing it at the end. And Napoli actually ended up winning their league in front of Inter Milan. Pretty sure that's the same league. Anyway, but Inter Milan did not win, obviously, their home country's competition. They got beaten. So maybe their run of form was kind of bad leading into the final, but obviously they had to win in the semis, which they did against Barcelona. So, it was kind of one of those things that I was hoping that PSG won. Inter Milan, obviously, I wouldn't have complained too much if they won the Champions League, but PSG were gallant in all the games in the finals. Beating Liverpool, beating Arsenal on their way to Champions League finals berth. But yeah, so 5-0, pretty crazy result, we'll say. The Australian women's side in football won. The Matildas win over Argentina 2-0. Have I got anything else to talk about? EPL was done. A-League, obviously, now the season's over. I think that's about it. Yeah. So with all that said, thank you guys so much. If I could speak, that would help. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 100. You guys have a great day or night, and of course, take care.